All right, hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to this month Oracle Visual Builder Office Hour. And this month we're going to talk about what's new in Visual Builder and Visual Builder Studio in our May release. My name is Shai Schmelzer. I'm part of the product management team. On the line also are Brian Fry and Murtaza Amiji. They will be monitoring our Q&A session. So if at any point of this session you have any questions, you can see the Q&A little button at the top of your Zoom control. You can click on it and you can ask your questions over there. And Brian and Murtaza are going to help me answer those questions for you. And without further ado, let's talk about today's topic. So we're in May right now, and we have a new Visual Builder release coming out. It's our quarterly release. We have moved into a quarterly release cycle. Every 3 months, you're going to see a new release of Visual Builder with new features. This version is codenamed 2107, and it's already available for you if you're using Visual Builder Studio. Okay, so again, this is the product that used to be called DevCS and now has a new name called Visual Builder Studio, and the new capabilities for team development and integration between the visual editor and the whole life cycle, Git and things like that. Those instances, the guys who are using it already have this new version already available for them. And we are now going to roll out this version to the rest of the people who are using Visual Builder Standalone or Oracle Integration Cloud instances over the next couple of weeks. So expect to get those updates into your environment soon if you don't already have them. So let's talk about what's new in this version. So like with any version of Visual Builder, we're also picking up the new version of Oracle Jet. Specifically in this release, the built-in version is Jet 10.04. And Jet 10 brings in a bunch of new features and a couple of things to mention here. One of the things is a new dark theme support. So as you know, Visual Builder now focuses on creating Redwood-based user interfaces. There's a Redwood template that has been in the product in the previous releases. And now in this environment, you can also create dark theme areas. Okay, and to do that, you just need to set up the class for the containing container of your object as OJ color invert, and this would change the coloring of most of the components that are inside that area. Another thing that relates to the look and feel is the ability to now theme or create new skins or new look and feels on top of the Redwood look and feel. So Redwood gives you the Oracle look and feel out of the box, but if you want to change things in the new version of Visual Builder, you can now create a new CSS that define different behavior and different look and feel for the Oracle Jet Redwood theme. Okay, you can create it directly from inside Visual Builder, and it uses CSS variables to allow you to override the look and feel that Oracle provides out of the box. Beyond that, like with every version of Jet, there's a bunch of new components and also a bunch of new capabilities to existing components. So one thing we recommend that you do is go over and check the release notes for Oracle Jet 10, read through them and learn about what's new and what new capabilities you can leverage in your user interfaces. We also released a specific set of components that we've been using inside Oracle for a while now, called the Jet Dynamic Components. So you can find those components on the Component Exchange. So from inside Visual Builder, you can go to the Component Exchange and get those dynamic components. And the dynamic components can basically change what they're showing based on conditions. Okay, we have 3 components in there. We have a table, we have a form, and we have a container. And for each one of them, you can define rules that govern what is going to be shown in them. So for example, if you create a table, you can say that in a specific size of screen, I want to show 5 specific columns, but if the screen is smaller, I want to show just 3 of the columns. You can also do conditions based on the role of the user. So you can say, for example, if I'm connecting in as a manager, I see a specific set of columns in the table. If I'm a regular employee, I see another set of columns. And it's not just which columns you see, it can also be how the columns are displayed. And we're going to see this in a demo in a few minutes. Another set of new features that we added is a bunch of actions. Okay, so the first action that I'll talk about is the navigate action. We have a new navigate action, which improves the performance of the previous navigation, but also adds another set of capabilities. So up until now, navigation has been working for you to navigate from one page to another page in the same flow. With the new version of the navigate action, you can now navigate from a page in a flow to another flow, to the home page of the other flow. So as you can see in the diagram on the right, or in the picture on the right, there's an option there to say navigate to flow in parent page, which allows you to specify from inside the page, inside the flow, to navigate to another flow. So this is an enhanced capability there. And again, there's a bunch of other enhancement overall to the performance of the navigate action. All the existing navigate actions that you have would still be there, would still work. They would show up as a navigate classic or legacy. Okay, we recommend that if you create new navigation in your application, use the new navigate item, even if you don't need to navigate to another flow. Another new capability is a barcode scanner. Okay, so we have an action that is called scan barcode. It receives as an input parameter an image, and based on the image, it can read it and translate it, whether it's a barcode or a QR code. Now, one thing to note on this is this functionality is reliant on capabilities that are available in Chrome and the Android platform. So right now it doesn't work on iOS, but if you're creating a mobile application for Android, or if you're creating a progressive web app application that uses Chrome, you can use that functionality. The navigate back action that we have has been enhanced, and it now allows you to pass in parameters. So navigate back allows you from the page you're currently on to navigate to the page you were previously on. Now you can also add an array of parameters that you're sending back to this page. So for example, if you did some changes on a page and you want to notify the previous page about the changes you've done, you can now, when you press the navigate back button, pass those parameters over. And the last enhancement to the actions that we have is an enhancement to the REST call action, where we now also support the form data content type. So this is for specific REST services that require that type of data, and we added this in this version. On the business object side, we added a couple of enhancements. One of them is that if you have a relationship between objects, for example, the department and employees, and you want to delete an object that is part of this relationship, we now allow you to do that, and we can actually also remove the related reference field from the object that references it. So for example, if you have departments and employees in that department and you have the relationship between the two, and you want for some reason to remove the department object, you can now do it and will automatically remove the reference field in employees that points to the department. Another small enhancement is a number fields in REST calls. So business object, as we all know, expose a bunch of REST interfaces on them. And in the GET calls, you used to get numbers in a format that was a little too mathematics with a little E next to it. Now we just show simple numbers when you call it. So it would make it much more readable for everyone that work with those REST services. We also added a bunch of usability features, the ability to search across actions and also to search across variables in your development environment. This is very important for people who have applications that grow to be large with a lot of variables in a page, very complex action chains. It might make it a little hard to find out the exact thing you need. Now we have little filters at the top of the action chain, at the top of the variable selection that allow you to very quickly find the variable or the action that you need based on their name. Another thing that we added is usage information for action chains. Okay, so if you have an action chain in your page, it can be used in multiple places in your page. We now show you this information, just like we show you usage of variables and types in Visual Builder. On the Git front, we had a bunch of enhancement there as well. We have new Git operations that you can invoke from the Visual Builder Studio Workspace area. Those include the ability to add a file and do the operation at the file level, and also to roll back a file. So for example, if you checked out a file from Git, did some changes, suddenly realized, oh, I shouldn't have done those things, you can now very easily just click rollback file and get this specific file back to the status it was before. Another new Git operation that we now support declaratively is cherry pick of commits. So if someone did changes in some commits in your Git repository, and you want to pick a specific change they did, a specific commit that they submitted and applied to your copy of the code, it's very easy to do it now with a cherry pick commit. And again, we'll see demos of all those functionalities in a couple of minutes. We also added a Git history tab that shows you all the operation that you did on the Git repository with full information on when they were done, what was done, allowing you to more clearly see exactly your work stream and how you're working with Git. Another small enhancement or change is that the branch that used to be called master in the Git repository is now called main. This is aligning with the terminology that Git adopted across the industry. So now you have a main branch and then the branches that you create out of it. And along with that, if you're familiar with the publish operation in the workspace, publish would create a merge request from your branch into the master or now main branch. Now we can also create those merge requests to whatever is designated as the default branch in your Git repository. So your default branch doesn't have to be the main branch, it can be some other branch, and then the merge requests that are created from the publish operation would go into that branch. In general, we also improved the integration between the VB Studio environment and the Workspace environment. You now get a bunch of notifications on things that are happening in the project while working on the Workspace. So for example, if some build job ran and finished, you would see this notification, as you can see over here on the right side, as a little pop-up that would show up there. If you're doing some Git operation, we also show those notifications over there. In the reverse order, operations that you do in the workspace, such as creating a workspace or deleting a workspace, would now show up in the activity stream of your project in the project home space in Visual Builder Studio. Another thing that we enhanced on the project side of Visual Builder Studio is the ability to manage users by creating groups at the project level. Okay, so up until now, if you wanted to add members to your project, or if you wanted to assign, for example, branches to members in your project, you were working at the level of specific people. Okay, you were adding them one by one. Now you can define groups at the project level, or actually at the organization level, and then you can, in the project, assign specific things to the group. So you can add, for example, a group of people with a specific role in one go. And then if you add people to the group, they would show up again in the project later on. You can also assign branches and private settings on branches to groups of people rather than specific people. And you can also involve groups as part of your merge request process. Right, so those are the main new features that we added, and what would be helpful right now probably is to see demos of those things. So just like in every one of our office hours, we're going to go over and actually use the tool and show you the new functionality that we have here. All right, so we're starting with a little application here. this application is basically just the normal HR application. We see a list of employees. We can go into live mode and we can click on an employee and get information about this specific person. Now, what we can see here is we can see specific 3 fields, and this is how we built this dialog, right? So if we look at the design time and we look at the structure, we have here the form with fixed 3 fields. What I wanted to show you is how you can take this and instead use our dynamic components. Okay, so I'm going to delete this form from the user interface. Okay, and instead I'm going to go into our component exchange. Okay, and in the component exchange, I'm going to look for the Jet dynamic component. Okay. And as you can see, we have a table, we have a form, we have a container, and 2 supporting items. I'm going to use the dynamic form and I'm going to install it into my environment. Okay, so this brings this new component into my component palette. So if I go to my component palette, scroll all the way to the end, I now have the Jet dynamic form. And I can take the Jet dynamic form and drop it on my page. When I drop it on my page, you can see on the right side, we have the ability to hook up this form to be a create form, an edit form, or a detail form. In our case, we're going to create an edit form. So it will allow us to edit the information about employees. We're going to pick up the employees object, just like you would do with regular forms in Visual Builder. But this is the part where you get into the new dynamic functionality. This is where you're going to define a rule set that controls what we're going to show in the form, when and how. Okay, so we're going to create the emp form rule set over here, and we're going to create a default set of fields that we're going to show. Let's say it's going to be the name, the salary, and the email, for example. We'll click next. What we need to do now is map the specific employee ID for the get and update operations, because we're getting a specific employee, and when we're saving a specific employee. So we'll just drag over the ID of the current employee over to those places. Right, and this is how you hook up the form. So far, it's not going to look much more interesting than before. If I switch to the live mode and I click on an employee, you're going to see the fields coming up with the data in them, just like you've seen before. Now, where does the dynamic part comes into it? The dynamic part comes over here in a new tab that you can see here called Dynamic UIs, where we have for the employees, the employee form. And you can see that right now we have one rule here, which is the default rule. Without any condition, we're always going to see this. But we can add new conditions. For example, we can add a new rule. We'll call it the manager's rule, okay? And we can add a condition. Now, the condition can be dependent on various types of things. It can be basically specific values that you set, specific values of fields. Very useful are things that relate to responsive UI. For example, is it a large UI or a small UI or a medium UI? So for responsive UI, this allows you, for example, to set which fields will be shown in what order and things like that. And another set of rules can relate to, for example, the user that is actually accessing the system in terms of roles, who is the user, things like that. So for example, we're going to use the roles here, and we're going to check if the role of the user is managers. And if the role is manager, we're going to create a new layout that managers are going to see. Okay, we'll call it the managers layout. We'll click here, and over here we can define which fields manager would see. So we can say that the manager would see the name, the salary, and the email, but would also see, for example, the country and maybe the job. And we can also indicate that all those fields are complete regular input text. We can then switch over, for example, to the default layout and say that those fields that we are showing, each one of them is just read only. Okay. So regular employees would see a read only form. Manager would see a form that they can update with some additional fields. And all of this is controlled by those two rules. And you can see the flow here. If this is a manager, we're going to show the manager's UI. Otherwise, we're going to show the default UI. So now let's go back to our application. Okay, we're going to simulate at the start a case where we're one of the employees. Okay, so we're switching to the role of an employee. We're gonna click on a specific person. Okay, and we can see the 3 fields, and you can see that I can't actually modify the value here. Okay, now I can switch this to be with the manager's role. Okay, it's the same form. Now, if I click on an employee, I see more fields, and I see fields where I can actually go in and modify the value if I need to. Okay. So this is the basics of dynamic forms. And again, once you created this, you can come in later on and modify the rules. So if suddenly you decide that you need a different set of fields over here, for example, for managers, maybe suddenly there's a new field that you added and you want to edit, you just click over here, you can edit, you can set where it's going to be in terms of the orders of fields over here, and it will all be impacting your UI in a dynamic way, right? So you can click now, and you can now see the location field over here, for example. In addition, you can also define how fields are going to be shown. You can actually say that some fields are going to be shown in different ways, not just as input fields. You can have date fields and other types of fields as well. So if we go back over here, let's remove the location and let's say the job, and instead we can add the last update date, for example, which is a date field. We can also go, for example, and add the picture field. Okay, and let's remove the country just so we'll have, or the email, so we'll have a little more space. Now, the picture field, we don't actually want to show it as a text field. We can define a new template for this field. We'll create a template, we'll call it the pic template. Okay, and you can see that the default template is just showing up as a field. And I can say, instead of a field, I want to use the avatar component here, or maybe both the avatar and the field. And the avatar, the data for this is going to be the value of the field. Okay, so now we're going to have this image over here. We can actually, if we want to remove this field, well, maybe we can keep it, actually, might be better this way. Let's go back to our UI, click on live, click on a specific employee, and now you can see the image over here as well. Okay, so this is, again, dynamic UIs, a very powerful capability. We have it for forms, and we also have it for tables and the container. If you want to learn more about this, look up on our blog. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to publish a new blog entry that shows you how to use those components more deeply. Or again, you can just go over and pick them up from our component exchange over here. So this was one new capability, one new set of components. Let's talk about the look and feel aspect of your application. Let's pick up another page in our application, the department page, and show you the inverted or dark theme for a page. So we have here a page with 2 panels, okay, with the same structure. What we can do now is we can actually pick up one of those panels, for example, pick up this panel, okay, and go over to the class attribute of it. And just by adding one attribute called OJ color invert, switch this component to the dark theme. Okay, it's basically going to the dark side. If we now switch into live, you would see that it's not just the default values here. There's also different highlighting of components. Okay, so when you go into fields and you update the numbers here, let's do an arrow. You would see the errors messages in a different color compared to the regular ones. Okay, so again, if we were to do it something like that here, so okay, you can see the coloring here versus the coloring here. We switch things around a little bit. Also, the tabs you can see here are looking differently and with different highlighting. And again, all you needed to do is add this OJ color invert, and this is part of your Redwood theme. Okay. Now let's go over and fix this. So we'll remove the error messages. And let's add a button to our page just to show you some aspects of skinning. Okay, so if we add a button, say over here, okay, another button over here, like that. This is the default size of the Redwood theme. Okay, and this is how Oracle creates all our UIs. And if you want to follow our look and feel, this is how you would do it. But if you want a different UI for your application, you can go to your application's settings, okay? And over here where you choose the theme of Redwood, you can now create a new theme, okay? And you can see that we created the Redwood override CSS file for you. And this CSS has all the CSS variables that you need in order to override anything in Oracle Jet in terms of the Redwood look and feel. So I'm going to remove the comment from the beginning and the end. And then I can look, for example, for OJ button related classes. Okay. And these are the definitions of how a default button in Redwood looks like. And if in your instance you want to change this, for example, you want bigger buttons, okay, we can switch this from 275 to 475, for example. Okay. And again, this can all be for various things. We can then go back to our page. And get it to load. And now you can see the buttons are much bigger in terms of height. Okay, and this is again the default button for anything. So any button that you would add now to the page, for example, if you add another one here, it would have this size by default. Of course, you can go into specific buttons and resize them, but this is overall look and feel for your application. And so we have a button. We might as well define some action chains on it and show you some of the new action chains that we can do here. So let's have here a scan button, for example, and we'll define an event on it. Okay. And we'll show you some of the new actions that we can do. So as I mentioned, there's a new navigate action. The previous navigate shows up as navigate legacy. We can pick up the new navigate action, put it here, and just like before, we can choose a page in our flow. But we can also switch and say we need a flow in a parent page. And from the department page, I can now navigate to the employees page. So again, if we run this little application over here on the side, just to show you the functionality when it's running. This is the flow level navigation that we have here. Okay, we have employees and we have department. And again, we can click on an employee and get the details, stuff like that. We can switch over to the departments. Okay, and this is navigating to another flow. And then if we click the scan button, this would navigate us to another flow. Okay, so now you have this navigation from one page in a flow to another page. And so this is the new navigate action over here. Again, we recommend that any new navigate action that you put, you use this navigation and not the legacy. The other functionality we have is scan barcode. Scan barcode would usually go with an action of actually taking an image. So you need an image that you want to scan. Let's say the take photo action over here. And then after the take photo, we can actually, we need to convert the photo that we get into a bitmap. So we're going to call a JavaScript function over here. This is the create bitmap, and it needs to have a pointer to the image that we took. So the file would be a parameter here. And now we can call our scan barcode. Okay, so this would get an image as an input. This would be the result of this function that we called here. Okay, and then we can specify which format. For example, if we're scanning a QR code, we can say QR code. And then we can get, for example, a notification of what this scan barcode action translated. So the raw value that we're getting from here. So let's bring up the raw value here. Okay, we'll do a transient information message. Okay, so we take a photo, convert it into bitmap, and then use the new scan barcode action. And again, if we go to our page designer, go into live mode, click the button, okay, pick up an image, for example, this one. Okay, we can get the URL behind this image. This image, by the way, is this one. So one thing you can do is you can scan this with your phone right now and see if you get to the same URL that I'm getting when I'm clicking this button and scanning the same image over here. And this, by the way, is a sign up for the Oracle Cloud environment. Okay, so this is the new scan action that we have in the action chain. While we're working on the action chain, let's make our action chain a little bit more complex. We can add, for example, some REST calls over here. And we'll call this one, for example, get salary. And maybe then there's another REST call over here that is called update salary. Okay. And then maybe over here, we have an assign variable. We'll call this one assign new salary. So as you can see, as you build your form like that, things gets a little bit more and more complex. Things gets a little bit smaller in your editor if you need to fit everything. And there's a lot of actions in here. So one thing that you would find helpful is this new search area up here, where you can, for example, say, I want to look up everything that relates to the salary. And then you get all the actions that relates to the salary to highlight over here, okay? If we need, for example, function calls, we can get to the function calls very easily. And then to navigate between them, you can just use those arrows, and you can see as I switch between those, you can see the properties for each one of them. So this is, again, a very useful little thing that you can have here to help you while working on the action chains and on action maps. Okay. Another thing that would be helpful is working with variables. So let's go over to the variables area. Currently, we only have like 2 variables that were created. We can create a bunch of new variables. We'll create a salary and the previous salary. Okay, maybe this should be a number, by the way, and create another one, and we'll call this one bonus, and create another one, medium, or call this one average salary. Okay, so you can see basically you can add a bunch of variables here. And again, if you have here a very long list of variables at the top now, you have a search, and it's actually not just a search, it's a filter. When you type something, it would just leave here those variables. Okay, makes it easier to find your variables, modify, for example, the default value that you have here. Okay, this filter is not just here, it's also available for you in action chains. Okay, so for example, if you have a call function and you need in this call function to map a variable, okay, you can also do the filtering here. So you can type in salary and just get the salary variables as things that you can filter and get from here. Okay. So this search is part of our usability work here to make it easier for people with large pages, lots of variables, lots of actions, to more easily navigate and find what they need in their page. Okay, so I made here a lot of changes in this page that I actually didn't want to do. You can see there's a lot of errors here. Maybe what I want to do is roll back to how the page is actually right now in my Git repository. So I can start to try and do undo until I don't know when, because I didn't count how many actions I did. The other option is that I can go into my Git panel over here, okay, look at my department start page, okay, which has changed over here, okay. And by the way, there's 2 pages here, right? There's the HTML and there's the JSON. And I can go over and I can say, let's roll back this file. So we'll roll back this file, okay? And then I can also roll back the JSON file. And this brings me back into the status of my page when I last basically checked it out of the repository. Okay, and now we have that rollback pages over here. Okay, so this is one operation that we now can do at the page level. The other operation is you can, for example, if you go to your web application and maybe under resources, you need a new image. So you click here to import an image and we pick up this QR code that we need. And maybe it's useful to have it here as part of the testing. And you now want to add this file to your repository. Okay, so this file is over here. Sorry, where did it add this? Let's see over here. Yeah, here's the file. You can now right click on it and say add. And this would be now added into your Git environment. Okay, so those file level operations are new things that you can do, add and roll back on files in your Git Explorer. The other thing that you can do is we can do cherry pick. So this is something that appears over here. So if we go back and look at our project homepage, for example, we can see everything that happened in our project lately. Okay, and by the way, including operations such as create a workspace, which you see over here. Okay, so as I said, workspace operation now appear in the flow over here. So if we delete a workspace or create a workspace, it would show over here. Okay, now one of the things I see here is that at some point into one of the branches, which is by the way not the branch that I'm working on right now, someone fixed the footer to indicate the correct tier. So I can see the commit number over here. It's 7FF and a bunch of other things. And maybe I want to apply this change to the code that I'm working on. So I'm right now working on another branch. The branch is called demo 2107. You can see that my footer right now says Visual Builder 2022. And I want to apply this specific fix that someone did in another branch. So to do this, I can basically go over here and cherry pick a specific code change. Okay, so the change over here, over there, the commit was 7FF something. So I don't remember the exact number. I remember the beginning. I can look up those changes. Okay, and I can even see here what was the change. So from 2022. We went to 2021 and we added the word Oracle in front of Visual Builder. So I can now say I want to pick up this specific commit. I can see when it was done, what was the message that it was done, which branch it was in. So all the information I need to decide if I want this can be seen here. I'll also commit my changes in the meantime. And then I can do commit and cherry pick. This would basically go over, commit my changes, and pick up the changes that were done in the branch. You can see the Git notification here, okay? This is, again, a new thing that we have here, a bunch of notification that helps you know what's happening in your project. And now if we'll do a refresh of our UI here, we should see the new footer. Let me just do a refresh like that, maybe a hard refresh. No, maybe we should get out. Okay. Now we can see the new Oracle Visual Builder and the new year applied to our page. Okay, so this is how you do cherry pick. I think in terms of features we wanted to show you, one more thing we wanted to show you is working with groups in your environment. Okay, so as the admin of your Visual Builder Studio, you can also now define groups of users. Okay, so let's create a group. For example, we can call it our QA group, and those are people who QA our system. Okay. And we can then rely on a group that exists in IDCS, by the way. So if we click here, by the way, we can pick an existing group from IDCS. So this is one place where you can define the groups. If you don't want to define them in IDCS, you can do what I started doing here, which is to define the group directly inside Visual Builder Studio. Then you can look up people. So let's look up Brian, who's on our QA channel. I can also look up Murtaza in here. No, he's not here. Okay, so let's pick up, I don't know, is Laura here? Oops. Yeah, I need to learn to spell. All right, let's add Laura here. So we have two new people who are part of our group. So we define the group, and again, this is at the organization level. Now let's go back to the project that we have been working on. Okay, so far I was the only developer here. Now I want to add new members to my team. Okay, so let's click the add member. We can add a bunch of developers with limited access to our application. And if I click here, I can now not only look up specific employees, I can also look up the group that I created and bring in, let's say, this group as full access developers, and they are now part of these changes here. Now, for example, if I want to create a merge request for my application, for the changes I've been doing on my branch. So in our repository, I want to bring into main the changes I was doing on demo 2107. Okay. I need to have a bunch of reviewers. One thing I can do here is I can pick up not just specific people, I can pick up a group. So I can say, I need someone from the QA group to review my code. And then when I create this, they would be part of the approvers that need to approve my changes. Okay, so if they'll go in, approve a change, it would show up here. So this is one place where you can use groups in merge request. The other place is in the project administration area where you're working with your branches. Okay, you can pick, for example, the main branch and say that it always requires approval from someone from QA. Okay, so now in those areas where you define the privacy or the protection setting on branches, you can now use groups in addition to using individual people. So this was a little bit about the new group functionality that we have in Visual Builder and about all the other features that we added here. So hopefully these have given you some examples of the new features that are now available in Visual Builder Studio and will be available in your environment very soon if you don't use Visual Builder Studio. And that's about it for the topics that we had to cover today. As always, if you want to learn more, our documentation already reflects the new features. We have a blog that lists the key new features. In our documentation, you would also see more information. There's a section called What's New. And for each one of those features, you will have a direct link to the documentation on this feature. In the next weeks, we're going to publish a bunch of blogs that cover those new features on our blog. So make sure to follow our blog. Every time that we post something new on our blog, we also notify our LinkedIn group. So if you're not already on our LinkedIn group, the Oracle Visual Builder group on LinkedIn, go over there, search us and join the group. We'll be happy to have you as a member there. This month we passed the 200 members milestone, and we are looking to add way more people in the next weeks. Let's see if we have any questions that we need to cover.
Hey, there was a question that just came in, Shai.
Yeah.
It's been quiet on the questions front, but
Right.
just got a question from Akil about using Visual Builder Studio. They're using Visual Builder today and want to use Visual Builder Studio.
Yeah, so if you want to learn about Visual Builder Studio compared to Visual Builder, I would highly recommend watching the recording of the seminar that we did in the office hour last month. Okay, it covers what are the differences, what are the improvements that you get with the Visual Builder Studio environment. It's available in the same place where you signed up for today's seminar. We always have the recordings of the past seminar at the bottom of the page. There's also a playlist for those on the YouTube channel for Oracle Visual Builder Cloud Service on YouTube. So you can go over there and see the office hours. In terms of using it, Visual Builder Studio is free for you. It's a free provisioning for anyone with an Oracle Cloud account. So you can very easily go over and start to use Visual Builder Studio. Just spin up an instance, it's free, and start to use it. All right, hopefully this has been useful for you guys, and we are hoping to see you in our seminar next month, okay, on June 21st, same time, same place. We're still looking up into which topics we want to cover. If you have any things that you would like us to cover, feel free, by the way, to ping me directly on Twitter and suggest this or put it on our forum, or just there's a little also, if you noticed in Visual Builder, there's a little smiley icon at the top, which allows you to give us feedback on the product, anything that you like or dislike, or any ideas that you have for things that you would like us to expand on, feel free to click those. If you don't already have an Oracle free tier account, you have here a QR code and a URL that you can click on to get your free Oracle tier. It will give you a free database and a free compute and storage and a bunch of other things that would let you get started with Oracle for free. Thanks for joining us this month. Hope to see you next month as well. Keep in touch. Have a good day.